He wasn't supposed to survive. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Somewhere quiet or somewhere loud? Because what happened here, it didn't make a sound until it was almost too late. The crime scene sat under a pale morning sky, just outside a stretch of highway that hadn't seen traffic in hours. The kind of place where wind carries dust in slow spirals, and every footprint feels like it matters more than it should. Where the air smells faintly of cold metal and dry earth, and nothing moves unless it has a reason. A single patrol vehicle idled at the edge of the perimeter, its lights no longer flashing, just breathing quietly in the stillness, while a small group of responders stood a few yards back, speaking in low voices, careful, measured, like they were afraid to disturb something invisible. In the center of it all, lying against the cracked gravel and faded grass, was Staff Sergeant Daniel Hayes, his chest rising shallow but steady, his uniform dusted with the color of the road, one hand loosely curled near his side as if he had been reaching for something that never came. And beside him, closer than any human dared to step, stood Rex. The German shepherd didn't bark. He didn't pace. He didn't panic. He stood still, body angled just enough to shield, ears forward, eyes locked not on the man he was trained to protect, but on the space beyond him, somewhere just out of reach, as if he was watching something no one else could see. "Easy, boy," one of the responders murmured, taking a cautious step forward, boots crunching softly against the gravel. But Rex shifted instantly, not aggressive, not wild, just precise, placing himself between the man and the approaching hand with a quiet certainty that stopped everyone cold. It wasn't fear in the dog's posture. It wasn't confusion. It was decision. The kind that doesn't come from training manuals or commands shouted across a field, but from something older, something earned in silence, in long nights and harder missions, in moments where instinct is the only thing left to trust. A breeze moved through the scene, carrying with it the faint scent of rubber, of worn asphalt, of something sterile that didn't belong out here, and Rex's nose twitched once, twice, his muscles tightening just enough to be noticed if you were looking for it, which no one was not yet. They thought they understood what had happened. They thought they had the story already. A wounded Marine, an unfortunate incident, a response already in motion. But Rex didn't move, not an inch. His gaze stayed fixed, unblinking, anchored to a point no one else had marked, and when a second figure stepped closer from the far side of the scene, dressed in clean lines and calm authority, carrying tools meant to help, Rex's low breath shifted, barely audible, almost lost to the wind, but different, not louder, not harsher, just certain. And in that quiet shift, something changed, though no one could name it yet, because sometimes the truth doesn't arrive with sirens or shouting. Sometimes it stands in the open, waiting, held in the eyes of a dog who refuses to step aside. The man in the clean uniform moved with practiced calm, the kind that usually settled a scene instead of tightening it, his boots making soft, deliberate contact with the gravel as he approached from the far side, a medical kit in one hand, gloves already fitted, his voice steady and low as he spoke to no one in particular, just enough to be heard without drawing attention, while the others instinctively gave him space, trusting the rhythm of procedure, trusting the look of authority that said, everything was under control. But Rex did not shift, not even when the man came within 10 feet, his body remaining planted beside Daniel, chest rising slow and controlled, ears still angled forward like antennae tuned to something beyond the visible. And for a moment the entire scene seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for permission to continue, the kind of silence that stretches longer than it should, until one of the responders cleared his throat quietly and said, "He is stable, just, needs transport," a sentence meant to move things forward, to return the world to its expected order. Yet the dog did not acknowledge it, did not even glance toward the speaker, because his focus had narrowed to a single point, a single presence now stepping closer, closer still. And when that man finally crossed an invisible line only Rex seemed to recognize, the dog's posture changed in a way so subtle it almost went unnoticed. His weight shifting forward half an inch, his head lowering just, slightly not, in aggression but in refusal, a quiet declaration that something here was not right. "Not yet. Let me through." the man said calmly, extending a hand as if the gesture alone should be enough, as if familiarity could replace trust. But Rex held his ground, unmoving, his gaze fixed on the man's gloves, then lifting slowly to his eyes. And in that locked moment, there was something unspoken passing between them, something that did not belong to training or command, something older, instinctive, and deeply certain. The breeze stirred again, carrying with it a faint sterile scent that clung unnaturally to the open air, sharp and out of place against the dry road and distant pines. And Rex inhaled once, long and measured, as if confirming what he already knew. Behind him, Daniel stirred faintly, a shallow movement, a breath that caught and released, and one of the responders took a step forward instinctively, concern flickering across his face. But again Rex shifted, blocking the path, not forcefully, not with a snap or a bark, just enough to say no, not like this, not now. And confusion began to ripple through the small group. Quiet glances exchanged, brows tightening, because this was not how trained K-9 units behaved. This was not protocol. He has never acted like this, someone murmured under their breath. And that was the moment something unseen began to change. Not in the man on the ground, not in the still morning air, but in the understanding of those standing around him. Because the dog was not panicking, he was not disoriented, he was choosing again and again, with every second that passed, to stand exactly where he was, to deny exactly one person, and to wait, as if the truth was not something that needed to be found, but something that would reveal itself if only they stopped moving long enough to see it. There is a moment, just before doubt turns into awareness, when memory rises quietly to meet the present. And for Rex, it does not arrive as words or images, but as something deeper, something carried in scent and silence, and the weight of trust built over years that no one here can fully see. Because long before this quiet stretch of road, before the still air and the unanswered tension, there have been other places where instinct meant survival and hesitation meant loss. Places where Staff Sergeant Daniel Hayes had learned to read the smallest shift in Rex's body the way others read maps, where a flick of the ear or a pause in breathing could mean the difference between stepping forward and never stepping again. And in those distant days under a harsher sun, Daniel had once knelt beside him, hand resting firm against the thick fur at his neck, voice low and certain as he said, "If something feels wrong, I do not care who is giving the order. You trust yourself first," a sentence spoken not as command but as permission, as if he understood that one day the dog might have to choose alone, might have to stand against the flow of expectation and hold the line when no one else could see why. And now, here in the quiet aftermath of something no one fully understood, that choice was being made again and again with every steady breath Rex took beside him. The past threading into the present in a way no human voice could explain. One of the responders shifted uneasily, glancing toward the man with the medical kit who still stood waiting, his calm beginning to feel heavier now, less like reassurance and more like something rehearsed. And though his expression remained composed, there was a flicker, brief and almost invisible, that passed through his eyes when Rex did not yield, when the space between them refused to close. "We are losing time," the man said, tone still even but edged now with something tighter, something that did not match the quiet patience of the others. And that was when Daniel stirred again, a shallow breath catching in his chest, his fingers twitching faintly against the gravel, as if reaching for something beyond consciousness. And Rex's head turned just slightly, not away from the man, but toward Daniel, checking, confirming, then back again, unwavering, because the bond between them was not broken by silence or distance. It was held in these small, deliberate movements in a way one guarded, while the other could not. And the wind shifted once more, carrying that same faint sterile trace across the open space, sharper now, more distinct against the natural scent of dust and sun-warm ground. And somewhere deep in that invisible layer of information only Rex could fully interpret, something aligned, something confirmed, not as a thought, but as a certainty that settled into his posture like weight. And without a sound, without a single bark, he took one slow step forward, placing himself even more firmly between Daniel and the man who still waited to be let through, drawing a line that no command could override. Because some decisions are not taught, they are remembered. And in that moment, Rex was not just protecting his partner. He was honoring a promise made long before this morning ever began. The air shifted again, not in temperature, but in tension, the kind that settles into the space between people when something unspoken begins to press against what they thought they understood. And the man with the medical kit adjusted his stance just slightly, his shoulders tightening beneath the clean lines of his uniform as he took another careful step forward, slower this time, more deliberate, as if trying to move within the boundaries Rex had drawn without acknowledging them. "Easy now," he said again, voice still controlled, but carrying a thin edge that had not been there before, and one of the responders glanced at him, then at the dog, then back again, uncertainty flickering across his face like a shadow passing over still water. Because something about the moment no longer felt routine, no longer followed the quiet rhythm of practiced response, and yet no one could point to a single thing that had clearly gone wrong. Except the dog, always the dog, standing there like a fixed point in a shifting world, refusing to yield without raising his voice, refusing to explain without making a sound. And that silence began to weigh heavier than any command, heavier than the expectation that things should simply proceed. Daniel's chest rose again, shallow but steady, a fragile rhythm that seemed to anchor the entire scene, and Rex's ear flicked toward him for a fraction of a second before returning forward, locked once more onto the man approaching. And then it happened, not as an explosion or a sudden break, but as a small detail that slipped into awareness like a whisper. One of the responders, a younger man standing slightly behind the others, tilted his head, eyes narrowing just a fraction as he watched the approaching figure more closely, his gaze dropping briefly to the man's hands, to the gloves, to the way the medical kit was held. Not wrong, not obviously, but different in a way that resisted easy explanation. "Hold on," he said quietly, almost to himself, and though no one responded immediately, the words hung there, fragile but present, and the man with the kit paused just for a moment, then resumed his step as if nothing had been said. But Rex reacted instantly, not with movement, but with stillness, an even deeper stillness, as if every muscle in his body had locked into place with purpose, and the wind carried that same faint scent again, sharper now, undeniable to the one who knew how to read it, and Rex's nose lifted slightly, drawing it in, confirming, aligning instinct with memory in a way no human could replicate. "Sir, just let me do my job," the man said, a touch more firmly now, his calm beginning to strain at the edges. And that was when the younger responder stepped forward, not aggressively, not confrontationally, but enough to interrupt the flow that had been building, his hand raising just slightly, palm open. "Can you state your unit again?" he asked, voice steady but no longer casual. And for the first time since he arrived, the man hesitated, a fraction of a second that might have gone unnoticed in any other moment. But here, under the watch of a dog who had already decided, it felt louder than anything that had come before, and Rex did not move, did not need to, because the line had already been drawn, and now, finally, others were beginning to see it. The hesitation did not last long, but it did not need to, because once doubt enters a room, it does not leave quietly. It settles into every glance, every breath, every decision that follows, and the man with the medical kit felt it, even if he did not show it fully, his posture tightening just enough to betray the shift beneath the surface as his eyes moved briefly from the young responder to the others, measuring, calculating, searching for a way to restore control without appearing to lose. "I said I am with regional support," he replied, voice still composed, but no longer effortless. And the words landed with less weight than they should have, too broad, too practiced, not anchored in the kind of detail that people trust without thinking. And the younger responder did not step back. This time, his hand lowering slowly but his stance holding, his gaze steady now, no longer uncertain. "Which unit?" he asked again, quieter, but firmer, and the space between them seemed to narrow, not physically, but in meaning, as if the answer now mattered more than anything else in that moment. Rex remained exactly where he was, a silent witness and an unmoving barrier, his chest rising and falling with calm precision, but his eyes never leaving the man, and the wind carried that faint, sterile scent again, brushing past the responders, unnoticed by most, but sharp as truth to the one who understood it. Daniel's fingers twitched once more against the gravel, a faint movement that drew a quick glance from one of the team. "We need to move him," someone said under their breath, urgency creeping in, but it no longer carried authority. Not like before, now it felt like a suggestion waiting for permission. And no one moved, not yet, because something had shifted, something deeper than protocol. And then the man took a step forward, smaller this time, controlled, as if testing the boundary rather than crossing it, and Rex responded instantly, not with force, not with sound, but with presence, stepping forward in equal measure, placing himself once more directly between the man and Daniel, closer now than before, the line unmistakable, undeniable, and for the first time, the man stopped completely, his jaw tightening, his calm cracking just enough to be seen. "This is unnecessary," he said, a slight edge in his voice now. And that was when a younger responder's eyes dropped again. Not to the face, not to the posture, but to the details, the small things that most people overlook, the way the gloves fit, slightly loose at the wrist, the brand not matching standard issue, the medical kit itself clean, almost too clean for a field response, lacking the wear that comes from real use. And something clicked into place, not loudly, not dramatically, but with the quiet certainty of recognition. "Step back," he said, this time not as a question, but as a directive, and the words carried weight now, enough to shift the balance in the air, the others straightening slightly, their uncertainty beginning to align into something more focused, more aware, and through it all, Rex did not move again because he did not need to. The truth was no longer his alone to hold. It had begun to surface, carried not by words, but by the simple refusal of a dog who knew, long before anyone else, that something here did not belong. The word "step back" did not echo, but it settled into the air with a weight that changed everything. And for a brief second no one moved, not the responders, not the man, not even the wind that had been drifting lazily across the open stretch of road, because something invisible had just shifted from uncertainty into awareness. And once that line is crossed, it cannot be undone. The man's eyes flicked once more across the group, calculating, measuring distance not in feet, but in control, and for the first time since he arrived, he did not step forward. He held his position, shoulders squared but no longer relaxed, the medical kit hanging slightly lower at his side, as if its purpose had just been questioned without anyone needing to say it out loud. Rex remained still, but his presence filled the space more than any movement could have, his body aligned with quiet precision between Daniel and the man, ears forward, gaze unwavering, the kind of focus that does not come from training. Alone but from certainty, the younger responder took another step, this time closing the gap just enough to shift the formation. His voice steady, but no longer neutral. "Put the kit down," he said, not loud, not aggressive, but clear, and the words carried across the scene like a line drawn in the sand. The others adjusted instinctively, subtle movements, a half step here, a shift of weight there, not forming a barrier yet, but no longer leaving space open either. Daniel's breathing remained shallow, but consistent, a fragile rhythm that seemed to anchor the moment. And Rex's head tilted just slightly, not toward the man now, but toward the kit, his nose catching that same faint sterile scent again, sharper now that everything else had gone quiet. And in that silence, the smallest details began to matter. The zipper on the kit slightly misaligned, the stitching too clean, the absence of the faint scuffs that come from real use. Details that would mean nothing on their own, but together formed something harder to ignore. "Sir, place it on the ground," a younger responder repeated, and this time there was no mistaking the shift in authority. The man hesitated again, longer now, his grip tightening just slightly around the handle before loosening, and slowly, deliberately, he lowered the kit to the gravel, the soft sound it made on contact louder than it should have been in the stillness. No one spoke for a moment, because now they were all looking at the same thing. Not the man, not even the wounded Marine, but the object that had just lost its assumed purpose. Rex took one step forward, cautious but certain, his nose lowering toward the kit, drawing in the scent with quiet precision. And then he stopped, not touching it, not disturbing it, just confirming what he already knew, his body relaxing by the smallest degree, not in relief, but in recognition, as if the truth had finally taken shape in a way others could begin to see, and behind him, Daniel's fingers moved again, a faint sign of life that now felt less fragile, less uncertain, because the danger that no one had fully understood was no longer hidden. It had been brought into the open, not by force, not by accusation, but by the silent insistence of a dog who refused to ignore what did not belong. No one reached for the kit right away, not even the one who had set it down, because the moment had shifted beyond simple action into something heavier, something that required understanding before movement, and the younger responder crouched slowly, careful, deliberate, his eyes scanning the surface without touching it, as if even the smallest contact might erase something important, while another stepped slightly behind the man, not close enough to provoke, but no longer distant enough to ignore, and the space that had once been open now felt contained, held together by a quiet agreement that something here needed to be handled differently. Rex remained at the edge of that circle, watching, not tense anymore, but still alert, his breathing steady, his focus no longer fixed on the man, but divided now between the kit and Daniel, as if both still mattered equally, as if the danger had not fully passed. Just change shape? Open it, someone said softly, not a command, but a decision spoken out loud, and the crouched responder hesitated for just a second before reaching forward, fingers brushing the zipper, pausing again as if listening to something only instinct could hear, then slowly pulling it open, the sound quiet but unmistakable in the still air. And as the contents came into view, the difference became clearer, not dramatic, not obvious at first glance, but wrong in the details, the arrangement too precise, the labeling slightly off, items present that did not belong together, others missing that should have been standard, and the responder leaned back slightly, his brow tightening. "This is not regulation," he said, under his breath, and the words carried farther than he intended, landing across the group like a shift in gravity. The man standing nearby did not respond immediately, but his posture changed again, shoulders drawing tighter, his calm now fully fractured beneath the surface, and that was when one of the others stepped forward, voice firm, no longer questioning, hands where we can see them. And this time there was no hesitation in the command, no uncertainty left in the tone, because the situation had crossed from confusion into clarity. And through it all, Rex did not react with force, did not lunge or bark or break the silence he had held since the beginning. He simply stood there, watching, as if this outcome had already been decided long before anyone else caught up to it. And behind him, Daniel's breathing deepened just slightly, a subtle shift that might have gone unnoticed earlier, but now felt significant, like a signal returning after being lost. And one of the responders moved closer to him, careful now, slower, no longer rushing the process, as if understanding that timing mattered more than speed. And as hands finally reached Daniel without obstruction, Rex stepped aside by a single inch, just enough to allow it, not because he was told to, but because he had decided it was now safe. And in that quiet movement, the entire scene seemed to exhale, not with relief, but with recognition, because the truth had not been uncovered by procedure or authority. It had been revealed by something simpler, something harder to ignore, the steady, unwavering judgment of a dog who refused to look away. The shift from tension to motion came quietly, without announcement, as if the world itself had decided it was time to move again, and the responders adjusted with a new kind of care, no longer rushed, no longer assuming, their hands deliberate as they worked around Daniel, checking his breathing, stabilizing what needed to be stabilized, their voices low and steady, grounded now in awareness rather than routine. And Rex stayed close, not interfering, not guarding in the same rigid way as before, but watching, always watching, his body angled just enough to remain between Daniel and anything that might still be uncertain, even as the immediate danger had begun to fade. And the man who had brought the kit was no longer the center of attention, no longer part of the motion that surrounded the wounded Marine. his presence now contained at the edge of the scene, watched closely, his earlier confidence replaced by a stillness that felt heavier than silence. And as the stretcher was brought forward, its wheels crunching softly over the uneven ground, Rex stepped back another inch, then another, not retreating, but allowing, because something inside him had shifted, not the instinct, but the conclusion, and Daniel's chest rose deeper now. A steadier rhythm returning as careful hands secured him, lifting him with precision onto the stretcher, and for a brief moment, his head turned slightly, just enough for his eyes to open halfway. Unfocused at first, then searching, and they found Rex, not clearly, not fully, but enough, and his lips moved faintly, a whisper that did not carry words, only recognition, and Rex responded not with sound but with presence, stepping closer, his nose brushing lightly against Daniel's hand for a fraction of a second before the responders guided it gently back, securing him in place. And as the stretcher began to move, rolling toward the waiting vehicle, the morning light shifted, soft and pale across the open road, the kind of light that does not celebrate or mourn, it simply reveals. And what it revealed now was a scene transformed, not by force, not by confrontation, but by the quiet unfolding of truth, the kind that does not arrive loudly, but stays once it is seen, and Rex followed. Alongside, not pulling, not resisting, just walking with steady purpose, each step measured, his attention still alert, but no longer fixed on a single threat, because the unknown had been named, the unseen had been acknowledged, and behind them, the responders continued their work with a different kind of focus, one shaped by what they had just witnessed, by the understanding that sometimes the most important warning does not come from a voice, but from the silence that refuses to break. And as the vehicle doors opened and Daniel was lifted inside, Rex paused for just a second at the threshold, looking back once, not at the people, not at the road, but at the place where he had chosen to stand and not move, as if marking it in a way only he understood, before stepping forward again, following the one he had never truly left. The vehicle doors closed with a soft, final sound that seemed to seal more than just the space inside, and as the engine started, low and steady, the world outside did not rush back to life the way it usually does after a crisis. It remained quiet, as if holding on to what had just unfolded, and Rex settled himself near Daniel's side, his body close but not pressing, his eyes half-focused, half-watching, the way he always did when the moment required both rest and readiness. And inside the vehicle, the light was different, filtered, calmer. The sharp edges of the morning softened into something almost still, the kind of space where breathing becomes the only thing that matters. And Daniel's chest rose more evenly now, each breath finding its rhythm again. Not strong yet, but steady, and his hand, still resting where it had been placed, shifted slightly until his fingers brushed against the thick fur at Rex's neck. And this time the contact held, not brief, not uncertain, but real. And Rex did not move away. He did not react with excitement or sound. He simply stayed, anchoring himself there, as if that touch was something to be protected just as much as the man himself. And for a long moment, there was nothing else. No urgency, no commands, just the quiet presence of two lives that had carried each other through something unseen. And outside, through the rear windows, the road stretched back in a distance, empty again, as if nothing had ever happened there at all. But that was not true, because something had changed, not in the ground or the air, but in the understanding of those who had stood there, the responders who now moved with a different awareness, who would remember not the confusion or the delay, but the silence of a dog who refused to step aside, and the way that silence had spoken louder than any warning they had ever heard. And as the vehicle carried them forward, the light shifted again, warming slightly as the sun rose higher, touching the edges of Rex's coat, bringing out the deep tones of sable and shadow, and Daniel's eyes opened once more, clearer this time, finding the shape beside him without searching, and though his voice did not come, though words were not yet ready, there was something else there, something understood without sound, and his fingers tightened just slightly against the fur beneath them, a small gesture, almost nothing, but enough because some bonds do not need explanation. They're proven in the moments when one stands still while everything else moves and chooses not to leave, not because of command, not because of duty, but because somewhere along the way, loyalty became something deeper than either, something that sees what others miss, something that waits until the truth reveals itself, and then stays quietly until it's safe to let go. At a quiet roadside crime scene, a wounded Marine lies between life and silence while his loyal shepherd, K9, refuses to leave his side, not out of fear, but out of something deeper that cannot be explained, a bond forged through trust, instinct, and unspoken understanding that turns this moment into one of the most powerful animal stories you will ever witness. As responders arrive and attempt to take control, the dog's calm but unwavering resistance begins to reveal a truth hidden beneath. Routine assumptions, creating a tension that slowly unfolds into a gripping narrative where instinct challenges authority and silence speaks louder than commands, making this one of those rare animal stories where loyalty becomes the key to uncovering what others cannot see. Through subtle details, shifting glances, and the presence of a Marine who cannot yet speak for himself, the shepherd K9 becomes the only voice that matters, guiding those around him toward a realization that transforms the entire scene, proving once again why animal stories hold such emotional depth and meaning beyond words. As the truth emerges not through force, but through patience and awareness, the story evolves into a powerful reflection on trust, where a Marine's life is protected not just by training, but by a connection that refuses to break, reinforcing the timeless impact of animal stories that center on loyalty and quiet courage. In the end, as calm replaces chaos and understanding replaces doubt, what remains is not just a rescue, but a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of instinct can reveal the greatest truths, leaving behind a lasting impression that defines the very essence of unforgettable animal stories. Character 1. A 34-year-old white U.S. Marine Staff Sergeant, rugged face, short military haircut, light stubble, wearing dusty combat uniform, common tense eyes, front view, realistic lighting, battlefield fatigue expression, no cartoon, no CGI, no illustration, cinematic realism style. Character 2. A 6-year-old German Shepherd K9, full body visible, strong muscular build, sable black and tan coat, alert ears upright, intelligent amber eyes, standing protective stance, realistic fur. Texture, front view, no cartoon, no CGI, no illustration, cinematic realism style.